Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing why they left, understanding your ex's decision. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing why they left, understanding your ex's decision. So if you've been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will likely feel confused and blindsided. You want to properly understand why. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 reasons why your ex left you. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is predicted relationship growth failure. So when you was in a relationship with your now former partner, both of you, whether consciously or subconsciously, would have had views, opinions, aims and goals regarding when your relationship would hit certain milestones. This could be deemed as relationship growth. So some of you may have discussed this. Perhaps maybe one of you would discuss it, but the other person wouldn't really feel it was important. But I can guarantee you, for whether this was discussed publicly or not, you would have been thinking of this in your subconscious. So to break this down in its most simplistic description, this is a situation where both of you would have had aims, goals, and ultimately important rules within your relationship about when you want to hit milestones. So if you don't hit a certain milestone by a certain point, that would be deemed a deal breaker. Now perhaps this is in your subconscious mind. Maybe you didn't even realize that you were thinking about it, but every single person will have these types of goals, whether this is something that they think of often and clearly and actually discuss, or maybe this is just in your subconscious mind at the back of your thoughts. Either way, your ex-dumper would have had these thoughts just as I believe you would as well. Now, what exactly do I mean by predicted relationship growth and how did it fail? Well, as I've just said, if we connect this to goals and milestones, we can suggest 2 or 3 very obvious ones, but there will be more. Your unique relationship would have had unique goals and milestones which needed to be achieved in the mind of yourself and, more importantly in this regard, your ex. Now, probably the most obvious ones for most people would be number 1, living together, number 2, marriage, and number 3, having a child together. Now, this doesn't have to happen in that order, and some of you will be listening and thinking, well, I didn't have that goal. Maybe your ex didn't either. I'm just speaking in a generalized sense so you can see what I'm trying to get across. But what I would say is that those 3 goals that I've said are very, very common. So even if you didn't feel it was important, maybe your ex did. Maybe that was exactly the problem. But let's just see some examples. Let's say, for instance, that you were together with your ex for 3 years, and during that time, you both lived in different houses. Now, perhaps this was a situation that your ex felt was unacceptable. Maybe they spoke to you about it, maybe they didn't. Maybe this was something that you didn't see as a problem, but they clearly did. Now, perhaps it wasn't 3 years, maybe you were together only 9 months, and the same situation occurs. Now, I'm not here to say what the rules and regulations are about when you should be living together, but you have to understand that unless there is good communication, where you both fully respect and understand the perspective of each other, this could be a problem. Now, the other 2 suggestions I made were getting married and having a child together. Again, these are goals, these are aspirations, these are milestones that if you don't hit, your ex-dumper may have become your ex-dumper because they saw this as a relationship growth failure. They saw it as your relationship not growing to a necessary degree that they felt it should have done. Maybe they had an aim in their mind that they never discussed with you. That shows poor communication, but it could have still been the case. And this is the point. Predicted relationship growth failure. So your ex-dumper would have had in their mind certain timestamps of when they would have wanted to achieve certain goals. Now, maybe they discussed it with you, maybe they didn't. You can see what I'm trying to say here. Communication aside, this could be something that they deemed very important that you as a couple didn't reach. Now, whether they blame you, whether they think they was also partly to blame, what they will believe is that as a couple, you didn't achieve this, and maybe in their mind, that means that you're not compatible. Now, I'm not here to say they're right, but their feelings are their feelings. We can't argue how they feel on these elements. Maybe they change their mind once more, but if they don't believe a relationship was moving in the direction at the pace that they believe it should have done, they will see this as incompatibility. And unfortunately, this is a very big, common and popular reason for why somebody will end a relationship. So when we're trying to understand your ex's decision, one of the reasons why you may have been dumped is because they didn't feel the relationship got to the stage it should have done compared to the amount of time you were together. Now, maybe the milestones are none of the three that I mentioned. Maybe they involve something very, very personal between you both that only you two would have had within your unique connection. But you can see what I'm trying to say here. If a milestone isn't achieved within the time frame, this is sadly a very valid reason in their mind why they don't believe a relationship is worth continuing. Again, it's not necessarily all your fault. They might even believe it's their fault as well, but they might just say to themselves, it's just not working between us. Maybe you wanted to have a child, maybe they wanted to have a child, but perhaps you never really tried to have children, and this was because they felt that it wasn't going to be a suitable environment to have a child. So maybe they just feel that this isn't a scenario that they work with well with you. Maybe this is regarding work patterns, where you live. You see what I'm saying here? It doesn't necessarily mean that you didn't do something. Maybe they just didn't feel comfortable with you in that connection taking it further forward. Either way, if a predicted relationship growth doesn't hit the goals at the time they felt it should have done, sadly, this failure can be one of the reasons why your ex left you. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is bad actions. So point number 1 was all about not achieving certain goals. Point number 2 is bad actions, and probably the most common bad action somebody could take to then getting dumped is cheating. That is a bad action. That is an action that you as a dumpee have made in this instance, which has caused your ex-dumper to want to become your ex. This is what we have to understand here. Sometimes a relationship can seem perfect, but just one bad action can end it all. Maybe you were together 30 years, but it ends suddenly due to a bad action. Now, it doesn't have to be one huge bad action. It could be multiple bad actions, which eventually create a scenario where your ex-dumper feels that is the straw that broke the camel's back. So as you can see, it could be one bad action. However, it could be multiple bad decisions, bad choices, bad moments. This isn't connected to relationship growth failure. You could have a relationship which moved exactly at the pace that your now ex-dumper hoped it would. Maybe you lived together within a year or so. Maybe you were married within 2 or 3 years. Maybe you had children. Maybe it was perfect for you and your ex. But the action that you took caused your ex-dumper to end the relationship. Now, although cheating is the obvious bad action, there are an infinite amount of bad actions which it could be. Probably the most common after cheating is something regarding money, something regarding finances, something where you are not being responsible, reliable or trustworthy regarding the financials between you and your partner at the time. Now, this could be anything from not paying a bill to actively stealing from your partner and everything in between. But again, this doesn't have to be just regarding cheating or just regarding financials. It could be anything. Think about it with you and your now ex. What happened in your relationship? Was there a bad action that you took, whether it was huge or maybe over time you made some bad choices, bad decisions, which are very personal to you and your now ex? Maybe you can really recognize this now as why you were dumped. Maybe you thought, well, why am I going to be dumped we're married, we've got 3 kids together, why would they dump me? This isn't something that they should do, we should really try to battle through this. But no, in your ex's mind, you had crossed the line. In your ex's mind, this was something which was not achievable to save. And you have to respect that. We have to respect our ex's decision because it's their mind, their belief. And in this regard, they are the ones which have been wronged. If you have done a bad action, this is actively against your now ex. So really, you've got nowhere to stand on this other than saying, I'm sorry, and that is the very least you should be saying, really trying to apologise and get across that this will never happen again, whatever it was. Maybe your ex will give you that benefit of a doubt, maybe they won't. And if you do apologise, you should be doing this at the time of a breakup. And I would suggest just doing it the once, or maybe if you really need to make things clear, a second, perhaps a third time. But once that has happened, you can't be apologising forever. You can't be chasing your ex apologising after the dust has settled. If your ex-dumper knows you've apologised, then that is all you can do. They will either get to a stage where they can forgive you, or sadly, they won't. You can't keep pestering them and apologising day after day after day after day after day, because you're just going to be frustrating them even more than you did with the action itself. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about why they left, understanding your ex's decision. And point number 3 is loss of what matters. So when we consider point number 1, the lack of growth that your ex believed would be something which was necessary to proceed with your relationship. And when we consider point number 2, bad actions, where you've actually done something to really hurt your ex and cause a lack of trust potentially, ultimately what we see is a loss of what matters. And point number 3 is a loss of romantic emotional attraction. This is why your ex left you. Somebody does not end a relationship if they're feeling a high level of romantic emotional attraction. Now, romantic emotional attraction is something which can be lost very suddenly or very slowly over time. Either way, when it hits the necessary low point, somebody will likely action a breakup. Because if they're not feeling it, they're not feeling it. There's nothing you can do or say at that time. This is something which needs to grow organically in someone's mind. You can't persuade somebody to be in a relationship with you, whether they are somebody new or whether they are a partner that you've been with for many decades. If they've lost romantic emotional attraction, if they don't have enough of it, then you can't get them back. You can't get them at all if they're somebody new. If they're not feeling it, they won't be with you. And if they've lost it, they're going to leave you. And this is why we must recognise that if we've been dumped, once we've said our piece, if the dust has settled, if they won't change their mind at that time, you can't chase them. You can't persuade them. You can't persuade somebody to fall in love with you. This needs to be something which is organically grown. Now, can you get an ex back after making these mistakes we spoke of today? Yes, you can. Although sadly, not all of you will. You need to live your best life, do your best in every single way, whether this is regarding your own personal growth, whether this is improving as a person in ways which is your education, your fitness, your communication, your mindset, the way you treat other people. However you look at this, you need to concentrate on you, not your ex. Because once the dust has settled, there is nothing more which can be said. Again, if you need to apologise, you should do, but you can't be apologising forevermore. Once your ex-dumper knows you are truly sorry for something, that's enough. You can't keep apologising. Maybe if they reach out to you one day and you start to have a conversation, maybe you could fit in an apology there if it feels appropriate. But if you've been dumped and you say sorry for whatever it was that you've done, and maybe you clarify it again, okay, that might be all right to do. From that point on, you can't keep apologising. You can't keep beating yourself up. You just need to make sure it never happens again. And whatever it is you may have done, you might not be able to prove that. But what you can prove is that you've changed as a person. You can prove that you've changed by improving yourself in different ways. And your expert dumper might think, okay, well, if they've changed in that way, then maybe they've changed in other ways as well. That's what you need to do to increase the chance of your ex regrowing romantic emotional attraction. Because if they don't regrow it, they won't take you back. If they don't regrow it, they won't want you back. If they don't regrow it, you are unlikely to hear from them again in a romantic sense. The good news, dumpees, is that they can regrow it. The good news is that even if it takes many, many, many months or even many years, it is possible to get your ex back from most positions. Now, you can't guarantee this. There's nothing that you can follow A, B, C all the way through and you get your ex back. Nothing works 100% of the time. And therefore, you can't wait around. You can't clock watch. You need to focus on your own life. You need to make new connections. You need to live your life to the full. But you will increase your chance of getting your ex back if you improve yourself in the ways I've just described. Now, of course, there are always going to be the intricacies of your own connection. And if and when your ex reaches out to you, that is where the work really begins in the unique relationship sense that you will have and you will experience. That is why people contact me for my audio coaching service, so we can speak about this one-on-one. But right now, focus on you and remember, for whatever reason your ex ended the relationship, for whatever reason that they left you, there is a chance that one day they might come back. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.